Lena moved through the dining room of the summit with the silent grace of a dancer. The restaurant, perched on the top floor of a gleaming skyscraper, was a world of hushed luxury and ambient light, a place where fortunes were discussed over dry-aged steaks and multi-vintage wines. To the clientele, she was a blur of professional efficiency, a simple servant in a crisp black uniform. They saw her, but they didn't see her. They didn't see the woman who, after her shift, would go home to a small apartment overflowing with books on philosophy and political science. The woman who spoke 4 languages and held a degree in international relations. They saw a waitress, nothing more, nothing less. Tonight, her table was a particularly challenging one. The reservation was under the name Richter, a name whispered with a certain reverence in the city's business circles. Klaus Richter, a German tech billionaire, was celebrated as a modern visionary, a self-made man with a reputation for sharp intellect and an even sharper tongue. Though his public image was carefully curated to appear magnanimous and philanthropic, he arrived with an entourage that was a physical manifestation of his wealth. 2 impeccably dressed business associates, their wives draped in designer silks and jewels, and a young, sycophantic assistant. The moment they were seated, the air around the table seemed to thicken with a sense of entitlement. Klaus Richter was a man in his late 50s, with a shock of silver hair and eyes that held a cold, dismissive glint. He spoke to his party in low tones, but when he addressed Lena, his voice was clipped and condescending, as if speaking to a child. "Get us the menu, bit," he said, the German word for please, sounding like a demand. She returned with the menus, placing them down with practiced ease. Her demeanor was unshakable, a professional shield she had perfected over years. She waited patiently as they perused the laminated cards, her mind already running through the evening's specials and a mental map of every table she was responsible for. After a few moments, Klaus pushed his menu away, a gesture of finality. He caught the eye of one of his associates, a man with a nervous energy named Hans, and began to speak in rapid German, a language she knew like her own. It was a language she had learned in a small, cozy classroom in Munich during her junior year abroad, a time when she had fallen in love with its intricate grammar and its rich, layered history. Her professors had praised her fluency, her near-perfect accent, and her ability to grasp complex philosophical concepts in their original language. They had seen something in her. The billionaires at this table saw nothing. Klaus began to speak, his voice a low, mocking rumble intended only for his companions. "Look at her, Hans. She moves like she's a robot. No personality, no spirit, just programmed to fetch and carry." He chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. "It's what they're built for, isn't it? To serve. It's truly incredible how the world operates. Some are born to build empires, and others, ... Well, they just bring the bread." His wife, a woman with a perpetually bored expression, stifled a giggle into her napkin. Hans, ever the dutiful subordinate, nodded along. "Ja, Klaus. A cog in the machine. A very pretty one, though. A shame her intelligence is so limited. She probably thinks a server farm is where they grow waiters." The assistant, a young man who looked like he was auditioning for a role as a villain's sidekick, leaned in conspiratorially. I tried to ask her about the wine list. She just stared at me blankly. It's like talking to a wall. He made a show of shrugging his shoulders. The insults continued, a steady stream of casual cruelty masked by the foreign tongue. Klaus spoke about the futility of her existence, of the chasm between their lives and hers. Imagine the salary she must make, he said, gesturing vaguely with his hand. A few $100s a week, a pittance. My dog's dog walker earns more. It's a testament to the order of things, to the natural hierarchy. The strong ascend, the weak serve. He took a sip of water, his eyes scanning the room, enjoying the performance he believed was completely private. Lena felt a cold calm settle over her. She had been insulted before, of course. The wealthy had a peculiar way of belittling those they considered beneath them, a quiet, almost imperceptible disdain. But this was different. This was not a moment of thoughtless rudeness. This was a deliberate and calculated act of humiliation, a game of cruelty played in a language he believed was a secret code. He was using his privilege, his language, and his power to mock her to her face. Secure in the knowledge that she couldn't understand, he was wrong. She understood every single word. She approached the table to take their orders, a polite smile fixed on her face. Her hands did not tremble, her voice was steady. "Are you ready to order, sir?" she asked in her soft American accent. Klaus looked up at her, his lips curled in a smirk. He turned back to Hans and said in German, "She's so predictable. The little automaton, just waiting for her next command. Let's make her wait a little longer." He then turned to Lena and, with a magnanimous wave of his hand, said in heavily accented English, "Just a moment, we are still deciding. This one," he pointed to her, "is so patient, a good trait for her kind." It was the final drop in a full bucket. The subtle jab at her patience and her kind was a bridge too far. She looked him directly in the eye, and the smirk on his face faltered for a fraction of a second. She took a breath, and in flawless, fluent German, she responded. "Herr Richter," she began, her voice calm and clear, the words perfectly articulated. "The Sauerbraten is excellent tonight. It is slow braised for 24 hours in a red wine vinegar marinade with juniper berries and cloves. I can also recommend the Kaiserschmarrn for dessert. It is a dish that requires a delicate touch, much like diplomacy. Something, perhaps, you should have considered before you made your public-private remarks. Or is this a new strategy for your company, a disruptive approach to human decency?" Klaus Richter froze. His face, a moment before flushed with smug satisfaction, went ashen. His mouth, a moment before twisted into a sneer, hung open. The rest of his party fell silent, their eyes wide with disbelief. Hans's nervous energy seemed to leave his body entirely, as he slumped back in his chair. The wives looked from Lena to Klaus, their expressions a mix of shock and dawning horror. She didn't stop there. She was no longer a waitress. She was an equal, a force of intellect and dignity he had completely underestimated. "You spoke of my salary, Herr Richter," she continued in German, her voice still perfectly calm, a gentle rebuke. "You also mentioned your dog's dog walker. I assume you were referring to Mr. Wagner. He is a good man. And your dog is a lovely golden retriever. I saw a picture of her when Mr. Wagner came in last week. He told me you call her Geld Machine, or Money Machine, because she is the mascot for your new investment fund. I found it, ... telling. The color drained from Klaus's face entirely. The smug mask had been ripped away, exposing a man who was not a visionary, but a petty and cruel individual. Lena hadn't just understood his words, she had known his private affairs. Mr. Wagner was a popular figure among the city's elite pet owners, and the Geldemaschine detail was a private, unpublicized bit of corporate branding. Lena's intelligence was no longer limited. It was a devastating weapon. The silence at the table was heavy, broken only by the clinking of glasses at a distant table. Lena's posture remained perfect. She held the pen and pad in her hand, her expression one of professional expectation. She had delivered her response, a precise, calculated blow that had hit its mark with flawless accuracy. She then switched back to English. "Would you like to order now, sir?" Klaus Richter stammered, unable to form a coherent sentence. He looked at his companions, his eyes pleading for help, but they all avoided his gaze. He had exposed not just his cruelty, but their complicity in his public humiliation. The spell was broken. Lena had shown them all what he was: a fraud, an arrogant man whose power came from a secret that was now no longer a secret. His business associate, Hans, finally broke the silence. He cleared his throat and said in English, We'll just have the steaks. All 6 of us." Lena nodded, her face still impassive. "Very good, sir. A lovely choice." She wrote down the order and turned, walking back to the kitchen, leaving a stunned silence in her wake. As she walked, she could feel the eyes of the other diners on her. Word had spread, not through a loud scene, but through the quiet, ripple-like effect of a shared secret. A waiter from another section gave her a nod of respect. A busser smiled, a wide, proud grin. Her dignity had become a shared experience, a moment of triumph for all the unseen people in the room. The repercussions were not immediate, but they were swift and devastating. One of the wives at the table, a prominent social media influencer, had been live streaming a video of the dinner to her private followers. She had cut the stream the moment Lena started speaking German, but the damage was done. Her followers were confused, and the story of Klaus's frozen face spread like wildfire. A few of the people at the table, embarrassed by their complicity, began to distance themselves. One of them, a venture capitalist named Sarah, who had just been about to sign a major deal with Klaus, decided to pull out. It wasn't about the insult, she explained to a business journalist a few days later, speaking anonymously. It was the hypocrisy. He talks about vision and disruption, but he's just a bully who thinks he can get away with anything. Lena, the waitress, showed more grace and intelligence in that one moment than he has in his entire career. It made me question his character. If he treats people who serve him with such disdain, how can I trust him to treat a partnership with respect? The journalist, intrigued by this new angle, began to dig. She found Lena's name on a public directory and reached out to her. At first, Lena was hesitant. She didn't want the fame. She just wanted to do her job. But the journalist was persistent, and Lena finally agreed to a short interview, on the condition that her last name remain confidential. The article was titled, "The Billionaire and the Waitress, a Tale of Dignity and Disgrace." It was a masterpiece of investigative journalism, detailing not just the German exchange, but also Klaus's history of underhanded business dealings and his reputation for belittling his employees behind closed doors. The journalist had done her research, and Lena's story was the perfect hook. The article went viral. The internet, a place of both cruelty and justice, turned on Klaus Richter with a vengeance. His carefully crafted public image was shattered. Social media accounts created memes of his frozen face and his Geldamaschen dog. His company's stock took a hit. A major investment fund pulled their support, citing ethical concerns. He was forced to issue a public apology, a carefully worded statement that rang hollow. He was a man who had everything, and now he had nothing but his shame. As for Lena, her life changed, but not in the way a Hollywood movie would predict. She didn't become a millionaire overnight. She didn't buy a new car or a big house. But she did receive a scholarship to a prestigious university for a Master's program she had been dreaming of. A small, independent think tank reached out to her, offering her a research position. They were interested in her ideas, her intellect, and her dignity. She didn't leave her job at the summit right away. She worked her final weeks with the same quiet grace and professional composure. But the way her coworkers and the other staff looked at her had changed. They saw her now. They saw a hero, a symbol of quiet rebellion and unwavering dignity. The final night of her shift, she stood by the window, looking out at the glittering lights of the city below. She thought of Klaus Richter, a man whose power had been built on a foundation of arrogance and contempt. She had not sought to humiliate him. She had simply responded with her truth. Her dignity had become her shield, and her intelligence had become her sword. The city lights twinkled like 1,000 tiny diamonds, but she knew the true gems were not in the boardrooms or penthouses. They were in the hearts of the people who knew their own worth, no matter what others thought of them. She smiled. She had not won a battle, but a war. A war for her own soul, and in that war, she was the victor.